policy. Malaysia is seen as a stable and strong country in terms of political stability, economic prosperity, and a healthy social cultural environment. Malaysia, as a developing country on the verge of entering the developed country era, has sought to improve its position through its foreign policy mechanism. The success and accomplishment of a country's administrations are frequently reflected in its foreign policy. However, it is influenced by the shape and orientation of foreign policy pursued by a country's leader. Foreign policy refers to the government's approach to other nations. Foreign policy is defined as a country's aims, strategies, and actions in an attempt to communicate with another country. Foreign policy also can be viewed as a tool or instrument for communicating with other countries. First and foremost, Malaysia's foreign policy priority is to ensure the safety of its citizens and the country. For example, during its independence, Malaysia built contacts with Commonwealth countries such as United Kingdom, Australia, and New Zealand in order to seek military aid in combating the communist threats. Malaysia's foreign policy also tries to protect the country's interests as well. Because Malaysia practices the free market, it has maintained good relations with all countries through a policy of neutrality. Malaysia also has diplomatic ties with other countries that have a democratic political system. This is because Malaysian authorities have the authority to determine the path of our country's administration in order to protect the country's interests. Other than that, Malaysia has established overseas contracts in order to protect the country's economic development. So the last one is the goal of Malaysia's foreign policy is to foster world well-being. For example, Malaysia adheres to the ideal of respecting other countries' sovereignty.
Foreign policy making factor. The first historical factor. Since the time of the Malacca Sultanate has established relations with foreign countries like China, Arabia, Thailand, and also countries in the Malay Archipelago, this relationship takes the form of a trade relationship. Currently has relationship in the Malay Archipelago such as relationship between Indonesia, Brunei, Singapore, and Malaysia. After achieving independence, Malaysia joined the Commonwealth, which is diplomatic relations such as Britain and other countries like Australia and New Zealand. At that time, Malaysia was being threatened by communist ideology propagated by Malayan Communist Party. This communist threatens security the country of Malaysia. This prompted Malaysia to adopt a foreign policy which are pro-Western and anti-communist. Second, economical factor. Malaysia is a country that practices the free market. Malaysia also has good relations with other countries in the world in an effort to develop the economy. Since the British colonial era, Malaysia has been one of the main producers of rubber. At this time, economic relations have been established between Malaysia and developed countries such as Britain and the United States. After achieving independence, Malaysia still expects market and capital from these countries. Several measures have been taken to encourage foreign investment. This measure is expected to improve the country's economy. It can also provide employment opportunity. Next, political factor. As a country that adopts a system of parliamentary democracy, Malaysia has the right to determine its own future direction based on the principle of universal peace. Malaysia's foreign policy emphasizes the preservation of the sovereignty of other countries. For example, Malaysia's policy of supporting Palestine to establish peace in the West Asian region. Malaysia also adheres to the principle and Charter of the United Nations (UN) to maintain world peace. Therefore, Malaysia firmly supports a resolution taken by the UN to achieve and maintain world peace. Last, geographical factor. Malaysia has a strategic position in Southeast Asia. Our country borders countries like Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia, the Philippines, and Brunei. Its waters are also the main route for ship trade in the world. Thus, regional national security will influencing and leaving an impact on Malaysia's security.
So, my part is foreign policy under Tunku Abdul Rahman in 1957 until 1970. Alright, the first is about background Tunku Abdul Rahman. He is the first Prime Minister since independence is 1957 until 1970. It is generally not known that our first Prime Minister was also the one who took over the Foreign Affairs portfolio, which was the original name of the ministry. Furthermore, Tunku Abdul Rahman was also determined to transform the country and wanted to improve the quality of the people with the support and cooperation of the civil service inherited from the previous British. Moreover, Tunku Abdul Rahman led the campaign to negotiate with the British for the independence of Malaya. He is also remembered as the father of independence and the father of Malaysia. As a leader, he was responsible in Malaya gain independence from the colonial authorities in 1957. Now we move to implementation foreign policy Tunku Abdul Rahman 1957 until 1970. Okay, the first implementation is anti-communist and pro-Western policy. So the foreign policy under Tunku Abdul Rahman era must take into mind the bipolar struggle for power between competing concepts of democracy and also communists. At this point, we can see that due to Malaysia's dependence on Britain in the economy, so in the field of economy, Malaysia is a block of sterling, which is to conduct trade the value of the pound sterling currency. Second implementation is Commonwealth relations. Malaysia has adopted the free market to begin developing trade networks with other countries, such as the United States, Japan, Singapore, and West Germany. This was due to reducing dependence on Britain's economy and finding new and wider markets. With Commonwealth relations can also benefit the country to increase national income, and this is due to the threat from the communists in Southeast Asia within the country. We can see also the implementation. Malaysia signed the Anglo-Malaya Defence Agreement (AMDA). At this point, the British will provide access to Malaysia if attacked by any country. It also intends to avoid any engagement in the Western Alliance system. Furthermore, Tunku Abdul Rahman form of external relations. Tunku Abdul Rahman first level of foreign policy, Malaysia established the Associate of Southeast Asia (ASA). So the objective ASA is the first step toward regionalism, and Tunku Abdul Rahman advocates regional economic cooperation, not least to deal with political and security effects of the underdevelopment. We can see also Mampilindo together with Malaysia, Philippines, and Indonesia. It is to enhance friendly relations and resolve disputes in connection with the formation of Malaysia. Moreover, ASEAN agreement was signed in 1967 with Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines, and Singapore. So, Organization of Islamic Cooperation (OIC), it is to establish cooperation between member countries fostering the unity of Muslims in the world. Furthermore, the OIC aims to strengthen unity and cooperation among members in the economy, social and cultural fields.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is ATASHA binti ISMAIL, alias FADLI. Okay, so today I want to present about the foreign policy under Tun Abdul Razak since 1970 until 1976. Right, so a little bit of history about the second of Malaysian Prime Minister, which is Tun Abdul Razak bin Datuk Hussein, who is also known as the father of development in Malaysia. So Tun further his study in law. He also extended of his study to the highest level, where he was appointed of the Secretary of the British-French Union, led by the Tunku Abdul Rahman as president. This is due to the leadership he has shown. Tunku Abdul Razak concept of democracy is based on the social and economic balance, which is the all citizens can play a role in the development of the countries. So development of the country is a very big, because according to him, the biggest stronghold of the defense of the national sovereignty, which is not only located on defense, but more importantly, the development of these countries. So under implementation of his foreign policy since 1917 until 1976, when Tun Abdul Razak took over the reins of government and leadership of the country, the task became the well-being of the country for the Tun to deal the foreign policy, which is Tun began to learn to ins and outs of the foreign policy implementation by establishing the relation of the foreign countries. So the appointment of the Tun Abdul Razak as a Prime Minister of Malaysia on 22 of September 1917 was the first, followed by his experience in leadership, where is Tun as a member of UMNO, Tun as a Deputy President UMNO, and the last one a minister in the various ministry and director of Megaran. Under the implementation of his foreign policy, which is during the reign of Tun Abdul Razak, the policy was changed to a principle that is more open, neutral, and friendly to another countries. So Malaysia joins the Organization of the Islamic Conference (OIC) or the Non-Aligned Movement (NAM), and the principle of the neutrality through the implementation of the Declaration of Zone of Peace, Freedom and Neutrality of SUPIAN for the Southeast Asia of the countries. And the last one is Malaysia established the diplomatic relation with the China on 31 May 1974 as a complement to the domestic policy for the interracial integration and national development strategies.
So, as a conclusion, we can take the lesson that the formulation of foreign policy must take into account political, economic and social interests. For example, we have joint international organizations such as the United Nations, the Commonwealth, the Non-Aligned Movement and the organizations of the Islamic Conference to maintain sovereignty and enhance the country's economic progress. Next, we must strengthen the spirit of cooperation with neighboring countries in order to ensure national security and political stability. So, not only that, our country needs to prioritize economic prosperity in its foreign policy. Among them, we need to increase economic cooperation between countries of the world. And last but not least, in terms of education, there is the exchange of students between countries. It can understand the culture and way of life of students of other countries. This can create a liberal attitude among the people of our country.